Hello, hello. My name is Linda, known as Tortajala around the internet, and I love creative journaling and all things stationery. So, today I'm going to share a bunch of different clips with you to do a little bit of a casual fountain pen and ink chit chat. I know that most people do currently inked monthly videos, but I have realized that I don't empty my pens like on the month every month, so it just doesn't work out to be that kind of schedule, and I'm not a fan of like dumping ink or anything. So I don't know. Really, it probably just means I'm not disciplined enough yet, and I don't have like a routine schedule where I know more or less like how much ink I'm going to use, how many pens I'm going to go through. I basically re-ink a pen whenever I want to. Obviously, if I buy a new pen, I'm definitely inking it immediately. So there's just no regular schedule. So I thought that I would do like a monthly fountain pen and ink chit chat video where I just put together all the clips of the past weeks of what I've been up to. But I have to admit, I'm starting to get a little bit confused myself because there's so many like video files and clips, and I have to put it together. And obviously, sometimes maybe I did forget to film something. So please excuse me if things are like out of order or they might not make sense in like real time life dates because I'm just editing everything together after the fact to try to create something that like makes sense to share. I do have timestamps down below so you can jump around to what you might be more interested in. However, this is meant to be a casual video where I'm basically sharing all the fountain pen and ink related things with you because it's just fun to talk about these kinds of things with people who are also into fountain pens and inks. And I personally really like these types of videos that are like sort of chatty because I play them while I'm doing things around the house to keep me company. So I hope you will enjoy this video too. So first, fountain pens. If you have watched a few of my previous videos, you will know that I have new fountain pens. Pretty much my very first like expensive fountain pens because for many years I had like a Pilot Metropolitan and that's it. And then I did venture into like the very budget TWSBI Eco or like Chinese pens, budget friendly options out there, but definitely everything was under like $100 or really 50. It's just that the TWSBI Eco, like the special editions, are like €60 here in Europe, so that was like a little pricey. But yeah, everything much more affordable. And I just like that because in this phase of my like fountain pen journey, it just gives me a lot more variety to play with. I can test out different sized pens, different filling systems, different styles, like just a very exploratory phase, and I think it's fun. Especially if you're someone who likes variety. So I guess I'm still in that phase because I do very much enjoy having lots of pens inked because I can switch colors and also switch different pens, like literally one after another. Like sometimes mid paragraph, I just will get another pen because I want to feel something different. Because I'm sort of making like mental notes about the differences of how the pen feels in my hand when I'm like doing long form writing mostly. Um, and that way I can learn better about my own preferences. But, we all know at some point in this fountain pen life, we're going to make that jump in price, right? Because something's going to catch our eye. And so I have two new pens, and they're both from Leonardo. I did post videos about these specifically if you want to hear about those stories, but I have a Momento Grande 2.0 in the brown Stardust color and a Momento Magico that is a bit smaller, but both are piston fill, and I enjoy both of these pens. Like, it's definitely a big jump in price from everything else that I have, but obviously they're also not the most expensive pens out there in the fountain pen like world. I have to admit, I have used them for months now, and gosh, there is a difference in quality. I mean, there's little things that you notice here and there as you use a pen, right? Like how smoothly does the cap screw in or does it ever catch, the finishes and the fact that there's no, blemishes or all the details, like everything, how polished it is, compared to obviously, a cheap $20 pen from Amazon. And I don't mean cheap to say that budget options don't work or have like always problems because we all know you can buy an expensive pen and it might not even write, right? So it's like faulty. Um, or am I just justifying it to myself, the price? But I just do feel like the more that I think about it, the more I use it, the more I write, I just feel like there is definitely a jump in quality. Um, and if you feel that you don't notice those elements that much if the pen just writes and you're fine with it, I mean, definitely there's something to be said about the design, right? I think that when it comes to resins, which is something that I find myself really enjoying right now, there is that unknown unless you see the pen in person and buy it at a shop. But I really love, the different resins and mixes. And I do think that they are superior in quality when you're getting, hand turned pen from, good materials compared to just sort of random resins and things that you get in like the off brands. And obviously, it makes sense. I mean, for reasons of price, right? If something costs a lot less, corners are going to be cut somewhere. So that's where I am now in the fountain pen buying world. And by the way, if you have a sharp eye, you might notice that I actually do have some new pens here that I haven't made a video about or mentioned. I usually film the unboxings because obviously I can't wait to open a new pen, but I obviously like make the video much later after I've used the pen for a while because I like to have something else to say or something to share about my experience before making a video if it's even worth making a video about that specific pen, right? So I do have a new Navalor pen, and it is ebonite, so definitely something different for me. And I also got a Benu pen, and I think it's hilarious that my first Benu is so reserved to what the brand is known for in terms of like color and sparkle and glitter. But I think it's because the colorful designs, like I like so many of them. I have a hard time choosing, and I just haven't settled on like what I want to get. And somehow, um, I ended up getting this one instead. So I will explain a lot more about it because it was on my wish list for a while, and there's, all this like reasoning behind it. But yeah, I will make specific videos about my new pens. And I think in the future, my thought is to make videos about like each brand of pens that I have, like all my Kowekos, all my Hong Dians, all my Jinhaos, like all, just to like compare. And I thought it would be a very good exercise too, which is something that you might be interested in doing because it sort of forces you to look back at your collection and like evaluate what you already have. So that is definitely an idea for the future. And finally, in the new pen um, arena, I am still waiting for my Coffee Monsters Co. Esterbrook SD pen. Yeah, it has not shipped yet because I ordered like the ink and everything else, so it was all back ordered. And I also requested to get like coffee swirls and not the red that some people have experienced after, I mean, I've been watching the unboxings and things. So I think everything is going to take a while because obviously they need to take the time to look at the pens when they arrive and like choose one that I would like the most. So yeah, I will definitely share when I get mine. Because ultimately I think everyone is interested in seeing like what kind of swirl did you get, in the Jonathan Brooks resin that's in the Coffee Monsters Co. Esterbrook SD pen. So I will share that when it comes. So generally, I am very much enjoying my pen life. I use my pens regularly in my Midori Hibino because I do daily doodling, and I also have my morning pages in my Moleskin. So there's lots of writing going on. And I also have a Rhodia like scratch pad kind of thing on my desk. So this gets a lot of like ink writing and randomness just throughout, daily life. So that is my, fountain pen life. Now onto inks. I very quickly fell down the rabbit hole of buying bottled inks. I think that getting samples is actually a better idea, a very good idea, and economical, so that you can try out colors, um, you know, get to test it out before committing to a bottle. But it's not necessarily the most accessible here in Europe. There aren't that many shops that sell samples, and obviously, not all brands and inks are available in sample size. And then when it comes to some brands like Diamine, the price of a 30 ml bottle is like sometimes very close to getting like two samples. So it just seems too easy to just like buy the whole bottle anyway because it's so affordable. And I ended up doing that because to get one of the pens, I wanted to reach like the free shipping, and the Diamine inks were so inexpensive. I just ended up buying 10 bottles of Diamine 30 ml inks. Yeah, so I will be showing that a little later. But I started out with like 7 bottles of ink only for like years. And then this past December, I got the ink vent calendar. So that was like plus 25 little bottles. And we're not even mid year. We're just like a couple months in. And I have like, actually didn't count, but maybe another 25 full bottles. So yeah, I am going a bit too quickly. Um, into the rabbit hole of collecting too many inks. So I know that I do need to be careful. But let's go through quickly, or maybe not quickly, through the clips that I actually recorded of all these new inks that I have acquired. So most of these inks are probably just new to me, not to, the fountain pen world. But one new ink that I did get was Lamy Sepia that was recently released. It's a very nice brown color, and I don't own any Lamy inks, so I really wanted to try the brand and get one of these cool bottles. They're like these really round, large bottles that are 50 milliliter and pretty affordable too for how much ink you're getting. And, it comes in this box, it comes with instructions, and you can see the design of the bottle. Like it's made so that you really are going to make use of, all the ink that you have. I really like that it's part of the design. And then the bottom part of this big bottle actually has a roll of tissue inside so that every time you ink your pen, the idea is that you get a little piece of the tissue to clean off your pen before you start using it. So the bottom does come off, and it has that roll of refill paper in it. And yeah, it's just very cool design. To be honest, I'm not sure if it's necessarily super useful, at least not for me, because I make such a mess when I'm using inks. I probably need like a giant towel or something. But I get the idea, and I think that the design is definitely very cool. The paper inside, it seems to have like two sides. Like there's an absorbent side where you are probably wiping your like, pen nib and, a surrounding area. And the other side seems to be coated so that maybe the ink doesn't seep through to your hand or fingers that is holding the tissue, right? Because I've found that a lot of the times I'll have tissue to like wipe off my pen or whatever, but in the process of wiping the ink, it seeps through the tissue and then it just gets on my other hand, So I suppose it's like fountain pen life in general, though. I don't think you can like not have inky hands if you're a fountain pen user, but I do think it's interesting. I don't know, maybe some people are just really good at it and they never get, you know, ink stained hands. I do think that it's probably a deterrent for a lot of newbies or people who don't use fountain pens because, using inks and things like that, filling up your pens, it can get really messy. So some people might not be into that. But maybe you're a pro and you never get like stains all over. I don't know. Let me know down in the comments. Are you like always inky fingers and hands, or are you like, nope, I'm good. I've perfected the process and I do not make a mess? So I am happy to have like this new ink in my collection and like a different bottle. I definitely like trying different things, different brands, and sort of getting that experience. Right now, I'm organizing all of my ink swatches in this VDS A6 ring binder, and I will be sharing a video about my whole ink swatch organizational system, if you can call it that, later this week. So definitely watch out for that video. But basically, whenever I get a new ink, I'm going to make like a really big, giant swatch on this cream colored Tomoe River paper that honestly is very questionable to me because sometimes feathering happens and such. I'm assuming it's like the new Tomoe River Sanzen, but cream colored as well, which is always a little bit different than like the white version. But I have loads of this from the notebooks, so I'm just sticking to using it. So what I do is basically put a few drops of the new ink on the page and I spread it around using like a plastic cap from like an old toiletry thing because I like seeing the big swatches. It's also super satisfying to like make the swatch. And actually, the act of spreading the ink on the page actually helps me to feel like how easy does the ink spread, on the page? Is it like very smooth and slippery? Is it drier and harder to spread? Does it dry very fast? Because there are slight differences if you pay attention. I also, at the same time, make a much smaller swatch on watercolor paper. They're like strips of watercolor paper that I just cut myself. And I make the tiny little swatch cards to attach to like a ring. They're just like, I mean, I know you could buy pre-made ones to do ink swatches as well, but I'm just using stuff that I already have. So it's watercolor paper cut to the size. And I like having the smaller swatch cards for quick reference. And I'm also using my Kakimori brass nib dip pen to write the name of the inks and like label everything. And I have to be honest, I'm so like ambivalent about this brass nib. It's just not my favorite, and it's probably user error. Like I need to practice more and learn how to use it. Um, and get a feel for it because I just find myself always like twirling it around or pushing or whatever to try to make it, to write properly or consistently, I guess is the problem. But you're not supposed to push because that's not what's making it inky. It's the turning. And obviously, I need to practice like my angles and stuff to get like to know what it is I'm trying to, get out of the dip pen. So I don't know. But yeah, this is Lamy Sepia, and I'm definitely going to show you comparisons with other swatches to the brown inks I have in my collection so you can see the difference. I would definitely describe Lamy Sepia to be like a very rich dark brown that is more on the red side of things. It also seems very thick, like very rich in color, if that makes sense. Because by comparison, like the Jacques Herbin Terre de Feu ink is also very reddish brown, but to me it dries like, I don't know, like really matte. Like you can see the difference in the swatch too. I think it's just drier. But for Lamy Sepia, I did end up inking it up in a pen because I have two Asvines, the Asvine V126, which is a vac fill, and I also have the Asvine P20, and I decided to switch their nibs. So obviously they're compatible, but one is extra fine and one is medium. And I realized that the Vacfill one, it was such a wet writer with the medium. I felt like so much ink was coming out. Like it wrote well and everything. It was just like so much. So it seemed like it would take forever to dry. Or you could smear it easily. So I took out the extra fine nib from the P20 and I put it in the Vacfill. So everything worked out. It was like super easy to do. So the vac fill just means that I, open it up, put the pen into the ink, and I press it down, and the pressure will make it like suck up the ink from the vacuum pressure, I guess. And I don't try to do it like multiple times because I don't really need like a full fill. It's already so much ink. Um, I think that this is fine for trying it out. So basically, I have Lamy Sepia in this Asvine V126 with an extra fine nib. And I think it's a really nice match, actually. I didn't plan this or anything, but this is the amber color. So I think that it matches really well with the Lamy Sepia ink color. And just to show you a little test here, I'm going to use some scratch Kimbor paper that I have from the past. And so this is the Asvine V126 vacuum filled fountain pen, and I have an extra fine Asvine nib in here, and it's inked with Lamy Sepia, and it's working really well. Besides the nice matching color to the pen body, this is the amber color, yeah, it's still a very smooth writer, even extra fine, and because it's less ink, it's just not going to take like 5 years to dry kind of thing, and it's still pretty juicy. Like it's not like it's dry or not putting down enough ink, even though it's like an extra fine nib. Although I don't know, extra fine like Chinese nib, maybe it's not that fine. I don't know for some people, but yeah, this is good. So um, I am happy to try this pen out with something different because previously I had like Diamine Golden Brown in that pen and it was like a medium, so it was just way too much ink coming out, and it would just take forever. Like I would smear it all the time. So definitely want to try this out. So you can see here Lamy Sepia, this color here, very rich. Uh, Sort of reddish brownish color. And in my ink reference binder, I just want to show you the difference between these brown inks that I have. There's such a wide like variety of what people would consider brown ink, right? Like it's easy to say brown, but oh my gosh, there's such like a range, right? When it comes to the shades of brown. So the Lamy Sepia swatch, you can see that it's very rich, very dark. Um, but if you compare and look at like the Herbin, Jacobin, Terre de Fer, it's like similar in color, but the Herbin one, Herbin, why can I not pronounce this? But it seems very matte and like when it's dried out, so it's like really dry. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, they're like similar but not similar. Um, yeah, very interesting to notice these differences, and you sort of, notice the differences more if you actually put them side by side, because otherwise, trying to rely like on your memory, oh my gosh, my memory of an ink can sometimes be just completely wrong. So, that's one thing. But that is Lamy Sepia. So now onto the Jacques Urban inks that I have recently acquired. Basically a handful. These are like small 10 milliliter bottles. They're very affordable. So I think that's why it's so easy to like just buy a whole bottle instead of getting like a sample. Where I can buy a sample, like the price of the sample is just it's like half the price of a bottle. Like it's just too easy. And so when I was making an order for like other stationery things from this shop, I just, ended up adding all of these bottles in that I've always been curious about trying. Also because I'm still in this exploration phase of like the brown inks and trying to find like the brown ink that I really, really like. So I got like this whole set in terms of what I often see people have when they talk about these inks. So I previously already had a bottle, this 10 milliliter bottle of the color Terre de Feu, which is like a very reddish kind of brown ink. It was one of the first bottles that I got, and it's nearly done. There's really only a few drops left in it. Um, so actually, I'm wondering, what do you guys do when you finish a bottle? Do you like wash it and save it for, future storage or use, or do you just toss it? I'm actually thinking of like mixing something in here because there's still some drops left, and I want to see if I mix it with the other like brown inks, will it make like a different brown that I like more? Because I feel like the Terre de Feu maybe is a little bit too on the red side for me. So it'd be fun to like play around. I figure if they're the same brand, right, I can do some mixing and see if, it comes up with something interesting. That is like a whole other territory to play with, which is mixing inks. But in my ink reference binder, I want to show you before I start swatching. I have actually this very cool sticker that I got from Simone. And I really love it because it says, "Don't trust an ink swatch you didn't make." It's so true because you just have to see it for yourself. I mean, I think that's why ink samples and trading and things like that are like it's so fun and prevalent because it's a way to like try it and really see for yourself. Um, and that way you will know what it is for your own personal taste. I used to do different swatch cards, but I ended up with these smaller strips type because I think it's more convenient. And again, watch out for my video later this week because I'm going to go through my whole, how I'm organizing all my ink swatches and everything in this binder and swatch cards and all that kind of stuff. But basically, in this ink reference binder, I have all of my swatches on a page and I order them sort of like I group them by color family. And of course, this is color family according to me, because the whole point is that when I'm looking for an ink, if I want like a yellow ink, a pink ink, like I can flip to that section and make a decision comparing with like big swatches and also seeing what I've written, like my thoughts, my log entries about what I've used, like where I've used that ink before. And so my notes will be in here as well. The small strip like type of swatches on the ring, I use that more just as like quick reference rather and it doesn't have any more information, right? So that's just like a different type of reference. But yeah, let me just move on to basically all the Jacques Herbin inks that I have recently acquired and swatch them all up, and that way I can add them to my ink reference binder. Um, I got 4 different inks and I used just like a little plastic cap to like spread them on the paper. I have my Kakimari brass nib and yeah, I'm just going to swatch all of these and I will show you, of course, when they're dried as well. I think that I've always heard about these ink colors from other people in their videos. I think they're pretty common. Also, the Jacques Herbin inks, like the 10 milliliter bottles, they're very affordable and very accessible, very common, very popular, always available. So I feel like they're probably something that most people might have in their collection. I bought all of these like brownish colored inks because I am still on the search for my favorite like or go-to brown ink color that doesn't make me think of poop. So I am gonna be using the same swatching tools as I generally use as before. And I also got this Rule de d'encre, which I guess is not really that brown. It's more like a pinky brown, I guess. I mean, I guess you could consider it brownish, but very light and pinky. But yeah, I tend to gravitate towards the same shades. So I'm sort of realizing now, like, I need to stop buying like the same shades from all different brands because it's like they're so similar. But this is like a light pinky brown color to me. And I really do like it though. Although some people might think it could be quite light for writing purposes. I totally get that. But generally, I just love these shades. They're so pretty to me. And yeah, I couldn't help it. I had to get the bottle. It's like somewhere between 3 or 4 euro for 10 milliliters here in Europe, depending like which shop you're getting it from. So yeah, it's a small bottle too, and so it's pretty easy to use up. So I guess that's why it's so easy to fall down like the whole rabbit hole of getting so many bottles of ink. So for every single ink that I get, I do a very big swatch on an A6 sized sheet of Tomoe River paper that I am just ripping out of, like, I have a notebook of these and I hole punch it so that I could put it in my binder. And I do the big swatch because I like seeing a big swatch. I also like the action of literally like swatching it with my hand because then I can feel like how the ink performs on the paper. Like, is it super smooth? Is it spreading really well? Is it drying really fast? And then, of course, I still have my little swatches that are made from the watercolor papers that I cut out. And I know it seems like double work, but I just like having the different references. I refer to them for different purposes. Like the small swatches on the ring are just like a very quick reference, and I have it on my desk, and it's just sort of always there. And I can easily like spread them out, like fan them out and see all the colors that I have, like the variety, and put things next to each other and like very quickly see, the differences and things like that. But when I want to delve deeper into a specific ink or I want to see like the giant swatch, I go to my ink binder because that is where I also have a log of how I've used that ink. So every time I ink a pen, I'm like stamping the date, writing down, like, with that pen, what nib, like, and just putting my thoughts in. So I feel like the binder is a reference much more for long term and with much more like detailed information, sort of like a log of my fountain pen usage and thoughts and stuff. And I know people do this like in their ink journals, right? But to me, it feels like it just makes so much more sense to be in a ring binder because you can keep adding entries and the order of things can always be changed or you can like keep them together. To me, it just makes so much more sense because I don't like in a bound notebook, you'd be like flipping back and forth. Like if you used an ink, 3 months ago and then you're using it again, you got to like find that entry. I don't find that helpful for reference purposes. It's different if it's just your creative journal because obviously you can do whatever you want in a creative journal without problems. But yeah, for reference purposes, I really like the binder. So this next ink that I'm swatching is Cacao do Brazil. And for some reason, in my mind, I kept thinking that this would be more brown, but actually, to me, it's like a gray. Like, would you categorize it as a gray? Or I guess it's a brown that leans very, black gray. But for me, I literally want to put this in the gray section, like the gray black section of my family of inks, because I feel like that's what it tends more towards. Maybe it makes more sense because with the name cacao, it's more like dark chocolate or something. I don't know. But yeah, I just don't get the brown vibes from this ink at all. And maybe it's because to me personally, brown is always like more warm tone browns and like orange, red, yellow kind of leaning. And so this is like totally not leaning in that direction, or maybe because it's so dark. And I did get like a couple of other inks that look very not similar, but like lean towards this as well. So yeah, I end up getting always the same things. It's crazy. Um, but yeah, I sort of understand why people like to just like swatch their inks. Um, I don't know. I think it's just fun to do, obviously, in general. And also, you can learn a lot about the ink throughout the process of playing with it and swatching it. And also, it's just a relaxing activity to like swatch inks, right? It's fun. And so I do understand why people like to swatch like different groups of inks, different themes or colors. If you're exploring like a particular topic and you sort of like bring out those inks and like re-swatch them, I think that that's why it's so fun to have like an ink journal so that you could play and it's very different from any of these like reference materials. In your ink journal, it's more about play and exploration and learning about your inks as you use them, whether you're writing with them, swatching with them, drawing with them, whatever. I know a lot of people do paint with their fountain pens inks, right? So it's like another way to use inks. And I recently made a video about using the inks in like the refillable pens too, because you totally can draw with them, especially if they are the waterproof type. So then you can like watercolor over them or use them for other purposes, and they will not smear or get messed up. So that is very interesting. Now, on to the next ink. I also got a bottle of Lidite, and I have always heard so many people mention or swatch or talk about this ink. I suppose it's like very common and probably everyone has it in their ink collection. I guess it's supposed to be like tea stained kind of thing, but it's definitely pretty dark for me, but very much leaning towards like the yellow side of things. Personally, I drink a lot of like green teas and stuff, so the tea stain, it usually isn't that dark in color, but this one definitely like you definitely see it. It's not like too light, you know what I mean, in terms of writing with it or using it. So, Jacques Urban Lidite, it's more, yeah, like, would you say yellow green or yellow leaning? I don't know if that is the right way to describe it. Um, but definitely not like the dark, Lamy, Sepia, and that kind of thing that is very reddish. Like this is very different. And in writing, it's very dark, so it's very easy to see, very legible. I can see why so many people have this ink and like using this ink. I guess it's like in the middle kind of brown, right? Like it's not so red and it's not like so light. That's interesting. But in the end, it's maybe it's because I am looking at too many inks right now and swatching so many new inks because I acquired a whole bunch, like a whole bunch of new inks at the same time. When I looked at this ink, maybe I was expecting more or something like that, but I think it's sort of boring. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like it's just a standard color and there's not much else going on. And yeah, there's so many different inks and colors and shades. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, but yeah, I have them. I obviously need to try these inks in pens before passing like so much judgment. Um, but I have so many pens already inked that I'm trying not to like ink too many things because I want to use each thing before moving on to the next thing. But yeah, at some point, obviously, I'd have to ink all of these in a pen and use them to be able to actually have more of an opinion rather than just swatching them. And I guess that's ultimately like the problem, right? It's so easy to acquire inks, but then you haven't even used them in a pen, so it's really difficult to say how you feel about it if you haven't like fully experienced that ink yet. And not just in one pen, you probably have to use it in different situations, different nibs and things like that to really understand how you feel about that ink. So this is probably a clear signal for me to stop buying any more new inks until I've used all of these more. And I'm sure you know the struggle if you're like a fountain pen person, a fountain pen ink person. Um, because like when you're ordering things, if you're buying something else, besides trying to reach like free shipping, it's also just easy to add these little things on your wish list into your cart because like you're not going to go and order just like one tiny bottle. And I'm talking about online ordering because that is mostly what I do because I don't have like a local shop that I can easily just walk into and like buy one sticker sheet, one bottle of ink, one thing, you know? So when it comes to online ordering, have like my wish list, like things that I want to look out for. So every once in a while, like it's just so easy to like add these things to your cart. And yeah, that's the curse of not having a local in-person stationery shop. Um, but the next ink I have is Jacques Herbin Café des Isles, and it's another ink that I always hear about, and it's definitely more of the sort of like rusty, dark kind of brown color. And I think it's similar to Lamy Sepia, like in that family, a lot closer in shade because of like the reddish kind of brown really comes out. It is very rich in color and again, when I try to put it on the watercolor paper strip swatch that I make, um, it seems sort of dry. And maybe it's because I didn't put enough ink on the strip, and maybe that's why. Or maybe it's because I'm not using the Kakimori brass nib properly. But you can see even in the swatch, it's like really light on the watercolor paper, but on the cream paper, it's so rich. So maybe I'm like doing this wrong. This is like another I mean, is it a problem? It's just like another thing. Obviously, even when you swatch inks, there are people with a heavy hand who put more ink on the page, and there are people who, put a very light application, and all those things will change the way the swatch looks. Besides the fact that also papers, like they look different if it's cream paper, or white paper, or watercolor paper. So, yeah, so many variations. So, again, I understand why you need to swatch the inks for yourself to really get a feel for it. And sometimes when you re-swatch it, you you might have like a different opinion on it, which is also very interesting. I think that um it's just like a process, you know what I mean? So these are the four Jacques Herbin inks that I have recently acquired, and for sure I'm going to show you the swatches once they're dried as well. Um, but generally you can see on the creamy colored Tomoe River paper, um, it can sometimes look a little different than the little swatch cards that I've made that is white watercolor paper, which obviously absorbs the ink differently as well. And also the variation in my application. Like, am I putting a thick layer or am I, um, putting too thin of a layer and so it's like showing it up differently? I don't know. But these are the inks all dried up and you can see the difference in all of these quote unquote Jacquard brown inks, if you want to categorize them as that. So I'm going to be adding these dried ink swatches into um, my ink reference binder, and that way you can also see some comparison with the other brown inks that I have. I do have quite a few Diamine inks because of the, ink vent, and generally Diamine is very accessible as well, so I have a lot of Diamine inks in general. Um, and the brown inks that I have happen to like have Diamine Golden Brown, which is what I used to always use as well. But yeah, when you put all these browns together, you see a lot of similarities, but you also see a lot of differences. And sometimes the similarities, like they're so close, but then not close. And sometimes it's also misleading to look at the swatch because you sort of have to look at the writing as well. Um, because sometimes the swatch looks one way, but then when you write with like a fine nib, it might just look, much more dark or, much more light, whatever it is. I also have some Ferris wheel press inks, and I think that like the three little pigs Curious Woods, it's really dark brown, right? Like it almost reads like a gray black to me, but they're shimmer, so it sort of like changes things around. So I don't know. I do like looking at the swatches, and sometimes I do change the order and I'll regroup things. And it's sort of like how, depending on what inks you have, when you add one to the mix, it might sort of change like the whole picture. Um, and then I might like move something to another color family because out of the inks that I have, my impression of it has like changed. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, so the rule de I cannot pronounce any of these, but rule d'encre is like very pink, and I definitely love those, like the pinky inks. They're so pretty to me. Um but yeah, sometimes my mind changes and like I put this in the brown, but maybe I would want to put that in pink. And because it's not really like in my head, if I'm looking for brown ink, I don't think I would ever picture that. But if I'm looking for a pink ink, I could see myself putting that in a pen, right? So, um, yeah, I still have to try all of these, and I already have some pens in mind, like what I want to try them in. I know that it's not necessary to match the pen to the ink, but I tend to do that anyway. But yeah, just to show you here, the swatch on the cream paper and the swatch on the watercolor paper, sometimes it is definitely not the same, like after it's dried. So there can definitely be a lot of variation. And I guess that's why we have to like keep playing with our inks and use them in different places because we just learn more about the ink and the properties and, just get to know them better so that we can use them how we would like. Yeah, so my ink reference binder, obviously this can be like revamped and added to over time, and I can just keep building up my own reference for what works for me. If I want to change the orders, group things differently, all of that kind of stuff. I think it's really fun, and I just really love the flexibility of like the ring binder system, the fact that you can add things anywhere and also regroup things and change things up. I highly recommend some kind of like ring binder system because of the fact that it's so flexible to shift things. And this is because I am logging things where like one page is one thing, right? So that means that you can easily change the order however you like and regroup things. So like I sort of feel like the Ferris Wheel Press Curious Woods is more of like a gray black ink than a brown ink. Just like the Jacquard Cacao do Brazil, to me, it doesn't seem like a brown ink. I wouldn't think to put that into a pen if I'm looking for brown. You know what I mean? To me, it's more like a gray. Obviously, gray with like much more character and like variation, but I would, categorize it more as a gray black ink than a brown ink. But yeah, it's interesting when you look at this kind of stuff and, play around. It's sort of like when people play with like, paint chips and things like that. Like you can just put them around and reorder them and play with them. It's very fun. So these are the new Jacques Herbin inks that I've added to my collection. But of course, it is not over because, as I mentioned before, I bought many new inks. So, moving on to the next group. Next up, I bought 2 bottles of Colorverse inks. I do not have any other Colorverse ink bottles or even samples. So these are my first 2, even though I realize I'm completely late to the game because these were, very trendy like years ago, right? So I have Colorverse Coffee Break and Colorverse Brunch Date. And they're very cutely packaged and have all these stickers and things on them. I was trying to save some of all this packaging and stickers and things so that I could use it in my stationery journaling and just document all of these adventures. But inside, there's actually a brochure, and there are actually stickers of all the inks that I guess are in this line. So I wonder if they meant for you to use those stickers to like label your bottles, maybe, or something. But very cute illustrations. And I got these too because they were on sale. Colorverse inks probably they're not like the cheapest, right? I mean, oftentimes things from other countries, they are obviously just going to be, priced more when it has to be, imported from elsewhere. But these were on sale on one of the shops here in Italy that I shop from, so I just decided to go for it. And I bought Coffee Break and Brunch Date because, again, I am still in the explanation um, of brownings. So, coffee break is exactly what it sounds like in terms of making you think of coffee. But as I was spreading it around, it didn't really seem that wet. So maybe this is sort of like a dryer ink. And as usual, I will obviously need to use these inks probably multiple times in different pens to really understand like how they perform. But colorize, I feel like, okay, maybe I've made a mistake because I've gotten way too many brown inks that are all like very similar, which good and bad, because I'm sure many people do have inks in certain color families and they are very similar, but they each have like their own little detail or difference about them. So later on, I'll definitely do a little flip through of all of my swatches by color family from my ink reference so that you can see them all dried. Um, and then brunch date. I really do like this color, but I realized that it looks so similar to the Herbin ink that I just got as well, the Rouille d'encre, that one. It's sort of like the pinky brown, and when you put them side by side, they're of course a little bit different, but they're sort of like in the same family. So yeah, I am definitely ending up with a lot of similar shaded inks and realizing like that's why it's so important to have some kind of organization and some kind of system also, whether you're shopping like in person or online, like to reference and really um make sure that you're not duplicating things too much if that's not what you want. I know some people are fine with adding to their collection of inks because they just want them all, you know what I mean? And that's fine too. It just depends on what you're looking for. But see, like even the Café des Isles, it seems similar to Coffee Break, but not really. Obviously, the Café des Isles seems more red to me. So of course there are differences in the shades, but you know, they're all browns. and and of course, when you write with them, the way that they show up in writing is also sometimes a little bit different. So I really need to test these out. So you can see Rule d'Ancre and Colorverse Brunch Date, very similar. Although in writing, maybe the Jacques Urban one is a little lighter for sure. But yeah, these are two Colorverse inks that I will need to try out. So I was just doing all my swatches so I could add to my own reference, but I have not actually inked any pen with these yet. Now, on to the next one. Yes, I got another bottle of ink. This is a Leonardo ink, and I bought the Arancio Tarocco. And that actually is a type of orange here in Italy. It's like a blood red orange that, you often can get at the supermarket. And it just has like significant meaning to me and reminds me of my mother-in-law, my late mother-in-law. So I wanted to get this ink also to try a Leonardo ink because I also don't have one of these. The bottle is pretty nice and sturdy, and the box that it comes in is like that origami kind of thing, which is sort of cool as well. I don't know if I would keep the box though because I don't know. Do you guys keep all your inks in the original bottles? I thought I would do that, but then it was just annoying, so I usually cut them apart to use in collage or get rid of them because yeah, I'd rather just have the bottle, and then it's like ready to use. It is in a drawer out of light though, so I don't expose my inks to light as much as possible. But this is basically like a pretty straight up orange to me. I thought that it would be more like blood red orange, but it really to me is like just a very bright orange. And when you put it next to like other colors and stuff, you realize like how bright it is. It is not like a dirty orange, and I say that because later on I'm going to show you I also got like Diamine inks and like autumn oak and stuff like that. Some of those colors are more like they almost have like a muddy side to them, whereas this orange is it like to me it just seems like straight up orange and also very bright in terms of the brightness factor. Like I almost I don't know if it shows up on camera enough, like how bright it really is. And in writing, I suppose it might not be like as, highlightery in your face. It's more like, of course, when you see a giant swatch, it's like really, really bright in your face. But I think that it could work, for certain things. I actually have a fair amount of pens that have like the orangey color, like, um, as part of the resin or whatever. So it's something that I would like to use, but I wonder if I would think it's too bright after a while, like just staring at it. And the funny thing is, recently, I think just like the last week or something like that, Leonardo, they just released all new inks. I don't know if they only updated the packaging, but some of the names are different. I don't know if it's the same thing. I'm assuming it's not. It's probably maybe something has changed or and they've updated the packaging at the same time. So this is like the original, older version, not the new packaging that they just released. And again, I don't think they call it this anymore, the orange that they have in their line. So I don't know if it's changed. This is like the old one. But yeah, I do have other orange inks as well, so it's interesting to compare. And I have noticed that there are some inks that look very like matte when they dry, and then they almost seem like dusty, like the fruit cocktail you can see. But this Leonardo, it's like still very vibrant, very bright, even after it dries. So there are definitely different like ink properties and things like that to watch out for when it comes to any kind of ink color and how it ends up being like in the writing and stuff like that. So yeah, but I'm happy to have a bottle of this. I think that part of the fun is to have like a variety and to try different brands to see if I can tell the difference. On to the next one. As I mentioned before, I bought a lot of Diamine inks. I also bought some Ferris Wheel Press inks. So these are some purple inks that I bought. And I grouped them together because I wanted to ink up my Asvine P20. And you can see that it is very, purpley pinky. So I was trying to decide which ink to put in. So this is Diamine Violet. And Diamine Violet is like um, almost like hyacinth kind of violet to me and very bright. And then Tyrian purple um, ends up being a little bit like more dark to the red side to me. I don't know, sometimes I would not even call that purple, but I think that maybe on different papers, sometimes it leans more like burgundy-ish than like purple. And then I bought Ferris Wheel Press Madame Mulberry, and I'm not sure if I got confused with like I think there's something else with the name Mulberry because they have so many inks. But maybe I did mean to get this one because it's sort of like a mauve kind of purple, very light though, and washed out, shaded kind of purple, and I do like it. It's like leaning towards gray. And so I did end up inking this up with the Ferris Wheel Press Madame Mulberry. And this is the nib that I had changed with the Asvine V126. So I ended up basically making this medium nib P20 because previously when I had the extra fine in it, I think I put Diamine Lullaby, and I don't know, it just seemed really dry and it was like too thin of a line for me. So that's why I wanted to just switch it with something different. So here I am. It is a piston fill pen, so I am filling it up with Ferris Wheel Press Madame Mulberry. And I've actually used this pen quite a bit. I also did some pages and spreads in my Midori Hibino with this too. It's very odd to me because I feel like sometimes a lot of ink comes out and it looks very nice because it has some like dramatic shading and it's a little bit, darker and so easy to read. But then like sometimes it seems like weightless ink comes out. So then it becomes like this whole section will be like really, really light, which I don't think is good for legibility, obviously. So I don't know if it is a problem with like the nib and feed, the pen type. Um, because right now, with like the ink flowing, of course, it's completely legible. It's fine. It's this like dirty mauve, purple, light, kind of color. I really like it. I like these types of shades for sure. But again, I always have this issue where I'll write with the pen like paragraphs, and then suddenly it'll be like less flow of ink, even though it's completely filled with ink. It's not like it's to the last drops or anything like that. So maybe it's just bad quality pen in the sense that like the flow with the feed and everything maybe is not constant or not consistent. And maybe there's a difference. So I should make note of this though, because I realize I tend to have this issue with like my Asvine pens and is it the ink or is it the pen, right? So I got to try the inks in a different pen to see like do I get the same issue that, you know, I personally don't like. But otherwise, this is a really good pen. It's sort of like a dupe of a Leonardo. Um, so I really like the size. I like, writing with it. It is great for long form journaling. I use it for doodling and for morning pages as well. So I think that that is all the footage I have of actually like swatching and things like that. Because by the end of this, I think I had way too many other inks to swatch and I forgot about filming and I just did them separately and like differently in other ways. So let me just show you my ink reference journal and sort of flip through the colors that I have thus far, which maybe is a little more interesting. So you can see here I have all of my smaller ink swatch like strips. And so I was trying to count up like how many new bottles of ink I got. There are the Jacques Herbin inks, the Lamy, the Colorverse ones, the Leonardo, and then like 10 bottles of Diamine ink. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 maybe or so. So I definitely got a whole lot of inks. So you can see that I definitely got a variety of Diamine inks, all the ones that were like sort of on my wish list, like to watch out for. But oh no, I also got Roaring Klinger, the sketch inks, and two Ferris Wheel Press as well. So yeah, more like 25 plus. Woo. So let me just do a quick look through my ink reference journal so you can see that I have the swatches the big swatches if I have a bottle, and I have them grouped by color. So these are like the green ones, and of course, mostly I have a lot of the Diamine ink vent ones because I bought the ink vent calendar, so that's like 25 colors there. But these are the new ones, like the Diamine Evergreen and Diamine Salamander, which is like really dirty and dark kind of color, but I like it. And then browns, I do have a lot of samples that I use, and also the Diamine ink vent colors, and of course the new Jacques Herbin inks that I got. And also Diamine Autumn Oak. And I guess I put this in brown, and now I'm like not sure if I should put it in more like the yellow orange kind of color. Um, yeah, like as I flip through, I sort of like change my mind on the colors. Golden brown I've had for a long time and probably use like a lot. And then the new Colorverse ones, the Diamine Ink Vent ones, like Nutmeg, and there's a lot of like fun colors from the Ink Vent calendar, but they do have a lot of like shimmer and stuff. Oh, this is the Diamine Cult Pens Deep Dark Brown. So very, very dark. You can see it almost has like black sheening. Another from the Inkvent calendar, KYZ El Dorado, Diamine Amber, which I sort of realized after the fact, like, is it very similar to maybe Autumn Oak as well? But not really. I think that when you put them next to each other, then they are not the same, but they are like similar obviously color family, and then like oranges that I just showed before. And as with all inks, right, like there are slight differences, but they can be similar-ish. Diamond Wilted Rose is from the Inkvent calendar. Then we got the Colorverse, the Bond. Ferris Wheel Press, I had this before, and it's super light. So I feel like it has to be mixed with something to be darker, or you would use it more for like painting and stuff. And then I have a couple of the Pilot Iroshizuku inks, and I realized that this one, Kosumosu, doesn't it look a lot like Diamine Cerise? But maybe Diamine Cerise is just slightly darker. I also had the Jacques Herbin Corel des Tropiques from the past, and that is also like sort of like a pinky kind of color, um, but still different. So like there's all these variations. I also have two Kakimori inks, like the red and the black. So this is Iru Shizuku Sutsuji, um, lots of like the pink magenta kind of thing. Diamond Writer's Blood, pretty classic. From the Inkvent calendar, Forest Gâteau, Winterberry, Sleigh Ride. All of the super sheening ones, I'm not really like gung ho about, but I realized that you can mix water in and it would make it not sheen. So that might be more usable for me in that way. The Diamine Tyrian Purple, Diamine Potpourri is from the Inkvent calendar, as well as Lullaby from the Inkvent calendar. Diamond Purple Pizzazz, and it's very shimmery, was my first bottle of ink from like many, many years ago, 2021. So I've definitely used that a lot. And here's Ferris Wheel Press Madame Mulberry, which again is sort of like purplish, but also sort of like grayish. Diamond Marley is from the Inkvent calendar. Definitely love that variation there as well. But you know, I think that because I have a lot of like diamine inks, I probably could mix them and come up with like some cool combinations just to play around. I also did get two of the Rohrer and Klinger sketch inks, and Sailor 223 is so interesting to me in the sense that I thought it was gray, and then sometimes I think it's purple. And when you do a big swatch, you definitely see more variation, but in writing, if you use like extra fine, it almost looks just gray to me. So I don't know. These are a bunch of the blue inks and mostly from the Diamine ink vent. And again, the highly sheening ones, I'm like not as into because I don't know, I just don't seem to be that drawn. Like, I think they look very cool, the sheening, but from a practical point of view, I don't really want to use it. Diamine Celadon Cat, I really do like it, this color, which is weird because I've always said that I'm not really like a huge blue person, but I guess this is not like classic blue. It does make me think of like the ceramics and stuff, so I think it's very cool. And then my last section in this ink reference calendar is like grays and blacks. So I do have quite a few grays and blacks. I don't know, I sort of thought that it would also be useful if I wanted to put like one drop of a dark ink in a lighter ink to see if it would like darken it up. I don't even know if it works properly that way, but that is for the future when it comes to playing with inks and mixing them and seeing what happens. Um, Jacques Herbin Pearl Noir. That was the black that I used to use. One of my first ish bottles of ink from this is from 2022. Um, and Pelican Edelstein Moonstone. I do like this gray. And it's interesting when you look at the different swatches of gray. On one hand, you can be like, oh, they're just gray. But then when you compare them, you can see that there's these grays leaning, towards like brown or pink, or grays leaning more towards like a greenish tannish kind of um side. And now when you look at it together, Cacao do Brazil, like it definitely has a warmer, more brownish kind of leaning or tendency, I guess, when you compare it to other grays that are maybe cooler, if that's the right word. So yeah, it is interesting to see all of this. And Diamine Wishing Tree, I put in the gray section because it looks gray to me, but I realized that if you look at the shimmer is sort of more greenish, and so is Ferris Wheel Press. Curious Woods. In writing, it just looks very dark to me. It's like a very dark brown, but it does also have greenish kind of shimmer that sort of changes. Like it's like green and pink depending on the angle of the light. So it is very cool. But again, I'm realizing that in practical usage, I don't really like so much like shimmer or sheen. Kakimori have the black ink as well, and then the Roaring Klinger Lily sketch ink, which is sort of like a very dirty, greenish, dark kind of gray. Um, so if you compare like the different grays, there are definitely differences. So in some respects, I feel like I don't have that many inks because I'm sure other people have way bigger libraries, but they probably also have a lot of samples, whereas I mostly have bottles. Like all these giant swatches are bottles. They're not samples because when I only have a sample, I don't make a giant swatch because I don't have a bottle and I'm not going to need to reference it that many times. It's more just like a little swatch that I do to reference the fact that I use that sample. By the way, this little holder where I have all my samples, I got the idea from Serial Nana, her YouTube channel, when I asked her about it because she had one and she had like ink samples in it, and she said that they're actually like silicone makeup brush holders, and you can sort of get them, online or anywhere like Amazon, stuff like that. I ordered it from AliExpress, really inexpensive, and it's perfect for holding ink samples. I love that to put that on my desk and hopefully limit me to not that many samples so that I actually use them and not just accumulate. So, yeah, this month has definitely been just a bit of a jump in terms of acquiring new pens, acquiring lots of new inks, and I guess now I need to move more into a phase of actually like using all the things and having more experiences with them and experimenting, all that kind of stuff. And perhaps the next time I check in with a fountain pen chit chat, it's more talking about like actual experiences. I think that would be fun as well. So, thank you so, so much for listening and watching this video. I very much appreciate it. And um, please do hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to my channel for more stationery and journaling videos. I hope you have a lovely day, and until next time, bye!